Hello and good morning, everyone. Today we're going to discuss about how does my business continue after a ransomware attack. And there is always question in there, shall I pay the ransom or not? That's a very important question, and sometimes that could mean that if you don't pay, there is no business anymore. My name is Anu. I work as a Cybersecurity Awareness Business Manager at Nixu, and then I have co-host Juha Leivo.
Hi, I'm a lead security consultant in Nixu's DFIR team. We are the team that assists our security operations center when major incidents happen. So we do the heavy-duty investigations, forensics, and incident response. Prior to COVID-19, I was flying to different locations to make the firm operational again after major ransomware attacks. So I've been handling multiple ransomware cases where the entire company has been crippled by the ransomware attack.
And then I have also Mikko Larikka here with me.
Yes, good morning, and my name is Mikko Larikka. I'm a lead expert and I focus at Nixu on business continuity management. If Juha is doing major incident response, myself, I'm doing the preparedness plans for responding the incidents in terms of business recovery. And then these recovery plans are then passed back to Anu, and she will take care of the training and awareness of those plans that they exist to recover the business.
And today, like you can see, we have quite a diverse background. Someone is focusing on technical side. Myself, I'm focusing on training and rehearsing. And then Mikko is doing the documentation. And we will hope that you participate in this webinar through the questions and chat section. So please, whatever comes into your mind, any questions, please send them to us. We either pick them through the webinar or then at the very end of the webinar. But then let's go to the agenda. First, Juha will tell us about threat intel and current trends, and then we will go through case examples. We have quite a few cases to go through, example Canon and Garmin. And then as a summary, we put together some learnings and tips for business continuity management, and then we have some time for the questions. But please, Juha, your turn now, and tell us a little bit about threat intel and current trends about the ransomware.
Yeah, so one of the things that I do is I complement my skill set with threat intelligence. So I'm part-time participating in our threat intelligence team, doing the technical analysis of stuff that they find. And one of the things that I am really interested in the threat intelligence is the ransomware and how it's developing. So we've all seen the ransomware in the very beginning of the 2010. Then it was like 2012, 2014 in there when we started seeing ransomware, which encrypted users' laptops, and the ransom was 300 euros. It was a nuisance to the world, but we learned quite quickly to do backups, and it went away. It wasn't financially feasible enough. It didn't bring enough money. It wasn't big players. Already a few years ago, I started doing incident response cases where the entire company was encrypted, and the ransom was very large. So the ransomware as an application or as an attack vector is the money is right in the attack. So you break into the company, you encrypt, and then you extort. You want the money out. You take you have the ransom in there. Whereas in the other cases where you're doing intellectual property theft or anything, you need to break into the company, exfiltrate the data, and then find a buyer or already have a buyer in there. Or if we're talking about credentials, it's peanuts. There's no money in there practically today. So ransomware is one of the where there is very direct business model and very easy way to get in. It started with the workstations. It went into the corporate games where they started encrypting corporations, and the ransomware prices went up. The game has gone much more brutal. So in the beginning, it was from incident response side, it was also quite easy. You find, isolate, and then recover, and off you go. Now they've added the next layer in here because the companies have started to get better in this stuff. So they've stopped paying enough times for the ransomware. So the ransomware groups are amping up their game. How they amped up their game is they're now double extortion. So they're exfiltrating data, since they have a good control of the network. They're exfiltrating data, and they are using this data to blackmail the company. So there's now two-folded way to use for the data. If you don't pay for the ransom to decrypt your stuff, they will start releasing the data. So they will use the data as a negotiation pawn. They want you to negotiate with them about the price, and if you're not reacting fast enough, they will start releasing the data. The other option that they have on the game is that you need to pay for not releasing the data. So it's being used to force you to discuss or communicate with them faster, and then you may choose not to pay for the ransom, but for the decryption keys, but you choose to pay for the option or the hope that they don't leak the data. The attacks have also gone into much more brutal. Prior to this, the attacks were encrypt something, encrypt some amount of in there. It wasn't as thorough as it is today. Already a few years ago, when it was attacking the companies, it was get the Active Directory, get the email, get the backups. Today, it's all that and stealing the data. They've also added a minor twist in there because they've noticed that the ransomware software starts hitting HMI, so human machine interface computers, which is between the factory ICT systems and basic systems. So the ransomware is starting to be aware of these systems, and it can stop and kill programs in there so that they can encrypt the Windows machines controlling the factory. So it's gone really brutal. And just a week or two ago, it took a nice new turn, if you can say that. They started extorting, so to get you to communicate with them, they will set time limits. So you need to respond within 24 hours, 48 hours, or otherwise the price goes up. That's one thing. The other thing is responding this time or we'll start leaking data. The third thing that they now added to this is they will now DDoS your environment. So if you're not communicating with them fast enough or the way they like, they will DDoS your environment. So they will take down your website where you have the information on what's available. They will attack other network points in the other points of network in your environment, which they have access to. So they're twisting you more, making the problem bigger and bigger, making you respond faster, making you make decisions in a hasty situation. So to summarize, it has gone from come in, encrypt something, and then ransom something, to come in, encrypt everything, exfiltrate data, and then force you to discuss with them either by leaking the data or warning that they will leak the data, and then DDoSing. So they're really starting to be aggressive with this. We're going to go through 3 cases which will showcase what happens to different companies and how they handle in this, and give you a little bit of understanding what's going to happen, what can happen.
Before you go to the next case and the first case, could you please tell us, do you have any information about these cyber criminals who are doing these attacks?
Yeah, okay. So first off, I'm not gonna name groups, because one of the key pieces in here is that they have fame. So whenever we talk about them, give them fame, tell about their auction sites or any kind of places where they have where they do their stuff, we're giving them visibility, we give them another tool in their box. But all in all, there's about 13 groups currently that are very effective and have their own leak sites, and there's even a small cartel going on. So they're cooperating. They've formed a cartel where they share tools and methods between each other and, for example, the auction site.
Then do you think some of these gangs are they maybe state sponsored, or what do you think?
So we know from cases like WannaCry and others that the North Korea is one of the government sponsored systems. So North Korea has groups that do ransomware. Which of the groups is it? It varies a lot. We don't know. We can't. Attribution is hard. Let's put it like that. So we don't know which of the groups work for which. However, U.S. government has put sanctions on certain persons in different countries that are expected to work with the group. So we would now go forward to the Garmin case.
So let's move. Actually, we had the Canon first.
Sorry, Canon, my mistake.
No worries.
My mistake completely there. So case Canon. If we could swap the next slide. There we go. So in a case of Canon, we can start asking, does the data breach, the data exfil matter actually? First, right off the bat, I want to say that there were two different incidents with the Canon. The one was the image.canon website, which provides you data storage for Canon camera photographs. That site had its own technical issue related to administration that wasn't related to the ransomware attack, which happened quite immediately after it. Canon got a lot of flack and a lot of news on the image.canon issue. This is not the same issue. So on 6th of August, about 24 different Canon websites were encrypted, and all of the pages showed under maintenance. Canon itself didn't communicate publicly about the ransomware attack. They chose to not do that. But there is a website called Bleeping Computer that has followed ransomware scene for a long time, and they have, for example, decryptors for many of the faulty ransomware software. When they became aware that Canon has some issues, multiple sites from Canon is having maintenance problems. Canon had the image.canon thing, so there was lots of speculation and questions on, is this a ransomware attack? Are these two related? So there was internal employees started leaking information to the Bleeping Computer. They, among other things, sent the internal memo that confirms that Canon is currently being attacked by a ransomware group that is visible in the screen right now as a Bleeping Computer article. But it didn't stop there. The employees actually also shared the ransomware message, which we can show to you. So if we switch the slide. So this is the message that they got from the ransomware group. As you can see, the message is really general. So they don't, although these are tailor-made, once the company has been breached, they do return on investment they have their return investment studies in there. So they are looking for how big is the company, how much can we ransom from them and expect them to pay, and then what did we get? But they're also bluffing to a degree. So they're claiming here that they got your files, documents, all your files and documents, databases and important data. And they will leak this if you don't pay for the decryption key and for the data leakage. Now, if we switch to the next slide over there. So on the Canon's case, Canon, the cyber criminals said they got 10 terabytes of confidential data. We know from the outside that only Canon websites seem to go down. The internal communication didn't actually say that you can't use email systems or anything. So it seems like they got the attack contained to a DMZ zone or some kind of zone where their web servers are. Everything in that zone was lost. But now the Canon also knows that if they claim that they have 10 terabytes of data, they have 10 terabytes of website data or something. So the criminals claim that they will leak the data. They will leak the data 5% at a time. And on 14th of August, they leaked actually 2.2 gigabytes of the data. When you analyze this data, you see that it seems to be content from the usa.canon.com website. So it has video materials in there, some databases related to the website, but nothing of importance. So in here, it seems like the attackers got into Canon's website network. They managed to encrypt everything in there and exfiltrate data from there. But from what we can see, Canon never paid for the data decryption key, nor for the exfiltrated data, because this wasn't simply an issue for them. This is not the same that happened to Carmen. So in here, let's jump to Anu.
Yes, so I'm gonna introduce the case Carmen for you and what happened there. We have actually one question here, but that question will be answered along the way. So yes, we have seen the latest cases in US, but we'll come back to that. So let's start from the situational awareness of Garmin. So what actually happened? So we have some technical hiccups here, but the slides are a bit lagging, but that's all right. So what happened? Everything started to happen in July, back in July 22nd. The users started to complain about the issues. Where else you think? Of course, social media nowadays. People they don't always bother calling the customer service. They rather go and do the complaint in public. So this started to happen Wednesday, 22nd. And then the major issues started to happen 23rd of July. And also on the same day, there was a user who uploaded the sample of the ransomware, like a sample to the virus total. And that's why it's believed that the attack actually started from Taiwan. Also, on the same day, the Garmin's own employees, they started to communicate through Twitter about this issue. And they actually already said that it seems that this is a ransomware which has been hit by them. And then same day, basically the Garmin had a global outage, and the company started to shut down its services. Example, the aviation database services, Garmin Connect, and all the services, example, that millions of people are using. And I'm meaning now especially the B2B, like Garmin watches and things, so they wouldn't connect anymore with the platforms. Then customer service was totally down, so was their website, and they needed to also close down the factories for a couple days. And it's also believed that Garmin actually paid the ransom either on 23rd or 24th of July, and they paid millions. The original request was 10 million, and it's believed that they paid at least 8 million, which makes it very, very high. We will come to the learnings in the moment. And when then Garmin started to confirm these cases or this whole issue was only on Monday 27th. But before that, already on Saturday 27th, because the active, very proactive employees of Garmin, the media then got a hint that it actually has been the wasted locker, which is used by one of the Russian hacking groups. So basically, the internal employees fed the media the whole time what was going on inside the Garmin. And then this is the next slide is showing us how all the Garmin softwares and the services were down. And this, I was following this basically live. So every day, quite a few times, I went to this website, connect.garmin.com/status, and see how are these doing. Because normally all these which are red saying down, normally they are green and everything is just fine. But unfortunately, this situation lasted nearly for 2 weeks before all these services were back up and running. And then what actually happens, what else? I'm trying to now think about what kind of other impacts these kind of ransomware cases have. So example, what happened in the stock markets? We could see that when this whole case started 24th we saw that the share price started to drop, and it took the new bottom 27th. We often see this in many cases, and sometimes actually these ransomware gangs, they know that they have very specific time when they hit the company. It could be, example, if there is a merge going or something, so they want to make sure that the company reputation is also hurt. And also in this case, the Garmin quartal announcement was only a week away from the attack day. But in the longer run, if we have a picture of the kind of how this looks nowadays, that the share price actually has gone back up, and as currently it's slightly even lower. And normally, if we see any like white papers and invest or research that people have done how the stock market impacts. So normally the companies who have been impacted by ransomware, in the long run, they can see that the stock market price could be slightly lower. But there is not a major issue there. Normally the biggest drop happens when the attack is confirmed or when it happens. And then what happened then in the media side? So we have this tool called Meltwater where we can see what actually happened and how companies, even though Garmin was pretty quiet themselves, they didn't publish the release on the only after a few days. So the media, because of the active employees, they helped media, but the media they had a lot of exposure. This is this 10,000 media hits during around 1 week. It includes also blog posts, and it includes also Twitter and other social media posts and things like that. So you can be sure that even though if you are quiet, you are pretty sure, can be pretty sure that the media, it still doesn't stop media to tell about the stories about the issues, especially when we have the product like this, when there is a lot of customers, and the customers are also openly complaining about the issues. So the media is very active. And this is also other thing what happens. Sometimes it looks like it could be just fun. It could be a little bit memes and people taking like a fun out of the situation. This was the fun side, but you can think about those people who should be then modifying the Garmin accounts. They actually have a lot of accounts. They have a local accounts, and then they have the global pages. So there is a lot of work to do if you start answering the questions. But though Garmin took how they communicated, the mouth was zipped and lips sealed, so they didn't actually answer to any of these customers. And these are the positive ones, but you can imagine that there was a lot of complaints, and people are saying that, yeah, I will never use Garmin again, so I will change to Polar or other product makers. And then what we can learn from this case, there's always a good ways to learn from each case when you investigate them. Well, firstly, of course, the advice is do not pay the ransom. It also gives an idea for these criminals that you are easy target, and you will negotiate with criminals, and maybe they attack you again, and they know that you could pay again. In this case, there could be some legal implication still coming. It's known that they used a third party when they paid the ransom. It was a company from New Zealand. And often it's said that when you start calculating the cost for this whole attack, that the ransom actually doubles the cost when dealing with these cases. And we can say that there is no organization who is safe from these cases. In US, there is currently a big case ongoing in the hospital. So we kind of, as normal people, we think that it's ethically so wrong. But you know, these criminals, they don't think about the ethical side. And of course, Garmin is very potential target because they have a lot of digital platforms, and they have people's very personal details. They have the healthy information and their training programs and training like records there. And of course, big hit means also always big money. And this was nicely targeted because of the large product portfolio and of course the timing as well. So it was just week before they had the quarterly meeting announced. And often in restaurant world, when you're choosing the venue, you should consider it location, location, location. So I wrote here communication, communication, communication. Be open with your communication. If we look back to Nordic Hydro or Maersk Line issues that happened a few years ago, we can learn a lot that actually it has been beneficial for them that they have been open about the issues they had, because they also at the same time they are spreading the awareness of these cases, and they help other companies to prepare. And also in this Garmin case, it looks like they probably didn't have, they were not ready for ransomware attack, and they didn't have a playbook ready because they rushed to shut down things instead of containing the problem. And always the sad part is that the human error continues to be a ransomware enabler. In these cases, we can often see that there has been a phishing email. In this case, and the ransom or the wasted locker often comes from the software update, which actually then the update is not what it's supposed to be, and it's actually the malware that takes over the computer. But there is a few cases, and then the next case is for Mikko.
And this case is about, thank you, Anu. And this case is about University of Utah, and few words about the background. So if Juha is coming from the major incident management point of view, major incident response point of view, and Anu is looking at this kind of a recovery and awareness and how the organization works to implement their playbooks. I'm looking this case from the point of view how it looks to be prepared for such attack, and what kind of whereabouts I can observe from the kind of public sources, and I kind of look their preparedness and so forth. And coming to the US and the University of Utah, this trend of ransomware taking over cities, infrastructure, service providers, and so forth, it started at least 2 years back. There was already city of Atlanta and many others have been facing this kind of ransomware attacks, and this is one of the most recent ones, so from the summer time, this Utah case. So, but this is just a representation of quite common phenomenon in the US at the moment. So this was, if I go with Juha's definition of different type of ransomware, is it about stealing the data, encrypting the system, so what? Here we can see that the attempt was to do this double extortion. So it seems that they targeted a system of one faculty and their systems where they have which were student information systems, and assuming that there were systems that included school grades and this kind of administrative information about that particular faculty. It was encrypted in a way that it rendered the systems inaccessible for that particular faculty, and also the data was stolen. And the situation evolved so that the chief information officer with security experts managed to restrict or identify which systems this ransomware impacted, and it indeed was not the whole university central systems, but only the faculty that had its own systems that were affected by this ransomware. And so soon they made a decision to isolate those systems and recover those systems from backup. So we can see that from the news that they were ready, and they did try to downplay the impact towards the attackers, saying that they had up-to-date backups. They managed to recover the systems. It was a minor, if you take the whole university, the targeted systems represented only 2 promilles of the systems that the university has. So it's very limited in that sense. And however, after examining the target and the risk of data being leaked, then they choose to pay to prevent the leaking of the data with the insurance company, $500,000 for that, to guarantee that the data wouldn't be leaked. And of course, in this kind of situation, when you go and pay the ransom, in this case to prevent the data leak, then it's only a you take a risk of them not kind of obeying their business rules, so they may still leak the data, but in this case they thought it was worth the risk. They managed to enter the systems through a system vulnerability, and this system vulnerability was fixed, and then the systems were recovered. What we can make some notes of the case, if I look it like from the planner desk point of view. So if I try to make as many conclusions as possible based on the information that is available. So it seems that the data was restored from local backups that seem to be taking from the local system. So if you think how this was organized, it was that you have a university central systems in central maintenance, and all in that infrastructure in a, let's say, controlled and not compromised by the attacker. But then they had this faculty with their own local IT systems and servers that were compromised and were having this vulnerability. And luckily they had backups from those systems and recovered those systems. So they kind of had preparedness in that sense that they had backups of those systems. It seems that they lost some data, but it was acceptable data loss. The other point was that they did a good response in that sense that they left the compromised environment as is, isolated. So make the network isolation of that particular segment where the systems were, and then they recovered a new systems for their own use. So then this allowed the investigation to continue about the breach in the environment that was indeed breached. So they just to kind of make it a bubble, contained, and then they recovered to another capacity the services and systems that were used by this student information system that they were using. Even they choose to pay the ransom, still they were quite unclear what information they lost. So this would be an indication that they did not have up-to-date documentation of their environment or inventory of the information assets that were contained or stored in those systems and databases. And in that sense, they kind of, there's a lot of unclarity, uncertainty, what information did we lose? But we could imagine that if they choose to pay the ransom, there might be some celebrities or politically influential people and their information that were contained in those systems, and probably that might have been just speculating, might be one of the reasons to pay the ransomware to prevent the data leak from those systems, or at least do that effort even if there's no guarantee, of course, that it wouldn't be eventually leaked, because it was stolen as part of the attack. So this is the university case. If you try to make it brief summary, they were taking basic backups, they were able to recover the systems. Obviously, it looked that there were some operational weaknesses, especially in those systems that were targeted. Probably this was discovered earlier that there is a weakness in one particular faculty that was targeted with this ransomware attack, and then the ransom was put and the message and demand was put, and then even the recovery was kind of seamless, quite sound. It was a very limited impact in the first place, and they managed to recover those systems. Still, it cost quite much money to protect that information or pay the ransom to not to leak the data. And there is discussion in US because again this phenomenon that ransomware is taking over companies and also government organization systems and cities, and then they systemically pay the ransom there. So this kind of promotes the business model of taking over cities and universities and maybe hospitals as well, and then just wait and see that they will pay the ransom. So now they are planning to have a regulation that this would not be anymore in the toolbox, that they pay ransom, that categorically it would be by regulation made so that the ransoms are not paid. But at the moment they are paid, and this is a very good business at the moment. And I guess in at the legacy and this kind of legacy systems, of course, are prone to these type of attacks. And I guess that just the footprint and the kind of exposure is so big in there that also puts them in the dangers and having this continuous ransomware attacks. But this is about the Utah, so they were good, limited impact, but on the other hand, they needed to pay anyway because it was not about retrieving the recovery key, but more about protecting the data that was leaked. And now summary.
So yes, we're gonna summarize, and we have actually got a lot of questions. Thank you for those. We're gonna actually answer to them all at the end, because I think we actually answer in some of them already in this summary. So firstly, how to avoid paying a ransom? Of course, we need to prepare, and then first Mikko is giving us some things to like a food for thought for you, how to prepare.
Okay, so we make this simple. So we have now adapted a kind of business-oriented planning method, meaning that we would like to first understand the target business function or service for which the preparedness is required. So this is the business functions could be materials management, it could be finance, billing, sales, software development, process, customer service, payroll, procurement, production, plant maintenance. What your business is about, what is your key operational thing that you need to keep running in order to keep in business for the period of recovery. So those should be prioritized, and this prioritization is happening mostly, and if not always, by the upper management, top management. They should know, and they know the priorities of the business and the areas of services and functions that must work no matter what. Then this should be a subset of all activities that the company does, and of course it needs to be done. But maybe some of them are not time sensitive, but there are time sensitive activities and business functions and services. Those should be then targeted with reasonably thorough, but let's say systematical system analysis of the business flows and its dependencies. So instead of listing a system or group of systems, rather we look to business flow and business tasks, critical tasks, and applications and their dependencies supporting that business task. So in that case, in that way, we get a much better picture of the systems that are concerned in times of disaster recovery. And often the organizations have IT services from supporting the business from multiple vendors and supported by multiple vendors. So it's kind of both horizontal and vertical. So there you see multi-vendor situations. So how to solve that complexity is to look at things from the business point of view. What I need, what systems I need. And then you gather the people and make the plan that we are here now in the peaceful times. Let's think how we make backup so that we can recover this business flow as it was identified and prioritized us by the top management or the business process owner. So you prepare the people to work on the fallback procedures during the times of recovery, and then on the other hand, the disaster recovery in parallel is performed with the priority and the order that has been in advance planned for in respect to that business flow that is targeted for the preparedness in the first place. While there, part of the activities and planning is that you will understand your environment and dependencies for that particular business function service quite well. And you will know your critical systems. Why not perform service risk analysis for those systems specifically? So you will figure it out if they are monitored, if they are patched, if the privilege access is organized in a way that is robust and is resistant for the different type of attacks, and that there are indeed technical plans to the lower levels of the technical plans at the lower level to recover the system. So there might be some particular infrastructure cloud provider or combination of those that in fact will enable recovery of that system. But on the other hand, our preparedness plans are quite high level in that sense that it will refer to logical systems names and their dependencies, and we then assume that and often assume that the experts that are actually running operationally system, performing maintenance and support services, they are the same persons that are capable of recovering that systems at the times needed, and they will have the documentation needed about the structure of that particular IT service itself. So more our focus is to see through the complexity and the priority and order of the recovery than focus on individual systems plans, because those should be placed in, of course. And the good plan is only plan until it's being tested some ways.
Yes, so the second part of the preparing is that when you actually done a lot of, like I would call it paperwork, you have done your documentations, so you need to start exercising. So you actually need to test the processes you have created, and you probably still come to the point that you find gray areas, that there could be certain areas that you haven't actually thought about at all, or maybe you come to the solution that this is what we actually have planned, it's not working. And then these exercises, they should be organized for different target groups. You can, example, have the technical one. You could have your techies there, and they could actually they can take the backups and see how they actually go, if they need to take the backup, how they go back on business with that. And it's often said that if you have never used your backup, you don't really know if they are there and how quickly you can actually use those backups. Then of course the management will need rehearsing as well. So basically they have a different things to on their table in the incident cases. They need to be good in doing decisions. The big decisions could even be, do they need to step down? Example, factories, one of the big questions could be that, do we need to pay the ransom or not? And then it could be all about the communication. It's good that there are different departments also present, and they train, example, who will be their spokesperson for the company and what kind of statements they will give out. And there's many other things that the management needs to also understand. One is the situational awareness. So who actually is in charge of the whole situation, and make sure that there is someone who has the judgment actually to do the decisions and give kind of the approval, and who is the person who kind of creates the situational awareness for whole situations. And of course, like I mentioned in the Garmin case, that often in those cases, they start from the human error. So always like a basic cybersecurity training is needed, starting from what's the good passwords, how you use multi-factor authentication, how you treat phishing emails, or currently there has been a lot of scam phone calls pretending to be Microsoft and so on. So make your staff the strongest link and asset against the cybercrime. And then if you have any even small incidents, you can always take learnings, or you go back and look at these real cases that have happened. So take learnings and make sure you update your plans, and those learnings, they also then land in your day-to-day businesses, and you get the action points, and actually there is people who are then in charge to make sure that the changes actually happen, and you follow them up. And then lastly, Juha will then give us a few other tips if your company or organization actually have been hit by a ransomware.
Yeah, so we're going to go with two different approaches here. We're going to go with principles and actions. On high level, we're going to have principles where open communication is number one. Report to the police, report to a local emergency response team, CERT, or National Cybersecurity Center, and do not pay the ransom. The number one, open communication, should be simple. We've seen what happens when you don't communicate. Your employees will do it for you, and the news will have a field day on it. Reporting to police and the CERT, these two give us a way to start tracking these groups. Every single case is a data point that we can use to start finding these groups and start solving the problem from the other way around, not paying them. And of course, not paying them removes the monetary incentive for doing this stuff. So these are the principles, but there are cases, as we've shown. For example, the data is so valuable that when it's lost, the cost of losing that is, if it comes public, is so high that that it doesn't matter what was the actual requested small price, if that gives us the chance that data is never released. So with the principles, you might have to be flexible in there. In the action side, we have the same situation here. When you have a ransomware case, the most effective that gives you the best options is isolate on network level as quickly as possible. If you have host level EDR systems, so that's endpoint detection and response software, that gives you the best tools. So you should be able to, with that, see the attack before it happens. That actually has happened with us. Or if it's a variant that does stuff that the EDR systems don't detect, or something else went wrong, with the EDR systems, you can isolate single hosts, so you can limit the impact. If you don't have EDR, then it's a question of how far in the network you can go to limit your stuff. So are we talking about, can you limit to the office? Can you limit to the data center? Can you limit to the DMZ? Where can you limit it? In many cases, when you're hitting the news, it's already all over the network and you can't solve it. Once you've isolated, you need to figure out how this happened. So how did it get into the environment? That is crucial. That cannot be skipped. I've been in cases where I'm solving the second ransomware case. The first ransomware case came in, took a part of the company down. They recovered from that. They never figured out how it came in. The second group came in the exact the same way. This time around, they really took down the company, and we were there. So always investigate how it got in. You need to know how it got in. And then change all the passwords. And here I would refer you to your Active Directory guys. So the guys who are maintaining your Active Directory. There's more passwords than you would guess. There's more passwords than there's username passwords and service account passwords. There's different magical passwords. All of those need to be changed. It's a huge hassle, but everything needs to be changed if you're planning to use the same infrastructure still. And then what I do in all the cases, I need to know what is actually business critical. If we have 100 servers down, what do you really need to get your business back up and running? So return the business back up and ensure that the attacker has been moved, so there's no entry point anymore, and the lateral movement method, which whatever it was, there's few favorite ones, that has been prevented. So the network isolation and figuring out how it got in, these are the ballpark solutions. So this is the high-level playbook that we would use when facing a ransomware attack. And with the network isolation or with the EDR solution, I highly recommend it, because if you manage to isolate with the EDR solutions, there's a possibility that the decryption key or the encryption key is still in the memory of the workstations or the servers. So there's a still possibility, there's a slight possibility of recovery procedures. It gives you one more chance.
Okay, thank you, Juha. And then let's start answering the questions. So first questions for about have you seen this news according to the recent advisory from the US Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Asset Controls organization that pay ransomware demands to certain groups could be fined if the recipes of the payment are under economic sanctions. So this was something that Mikko actually went through already in the Utah case. So yes, if no one would pay the ransom, I don't think there would be a business. And if the company would prepare for these attacks, there would be no business. And then what type of sanctions have been applied to nation state actors? Juha, do you have any good answers to this?
So this is your basic government level intergovernment sanctions. So freezing the monies on the accounts where they know, preventing, setting up sanctions. So if anyone transfers money to these, they will be sanctioned by the Treasury, and then travel bans, arrest warrants, and so on. So your basic setup for any kind of international criminals, practically. That's the sanctions that happen there.
Yes, and actually there is the criminal gang that has been kind of thought that has done the Garmin case. There is actually sanctions there because the gang is actually in bad books and wanted list in US. And then the third question, loss of reputation is one of the consequences of ransomware. How can companies recuperate that trust? Should companies report it? So I think we a little bit answered these questions earlier, but yes, we suggest the open communications, because if you are not 100% sure that you can hide everything, then there's always opportunity that your own employees are talking about this case, and it comes to public, and it will be basically public shame for you, and the loss of reputation, and it can be you can see that dip happening in the stock market. Google Trend is a good tool to check what's happening. If you go to Google Trends and you put Garmin there, you probably still can see the most searched topics for past 6 months. You probably still can see that ransomware and cyber attack and things like that comes up. So it also leaves very strong digital footprint. And of course, when you're thinking that thousands or it depends, depending of course what size of company and what industry you are in. But if you're starting to get thousands or tens of thousands of comments on social media, it will really hurt your reputation. So rather be open about it. And like I mentioned before, the Nordic Hydro and then the Maersk Line, they both have had a lot of benefits from the open communication. Also, they have helped the whole information security industry to understand these cases and how you can react to these cases. Then the next question.
Maybe some a bit more formally answering that. Obviously, GDPR, you need to inform about the data breach if you are having personally sensitive information. Then, if you are dealing with the payment instruments, PSD2 requires reporting the incident, and then if you are nationally hosting nationally in critical infrastructure, then NIST comes in the picture that you need to notify externally if you have lost or have any incidents in those systems. So there are some formal reporting, and now obviously Juha mentioned the CERT, that should be the kind of the first point of reporting, but you might be also regulating the industry such as finance or personal, right? This personal information, hosting that type of information, that also puts some demands on reporting externally, formally the event.
Yes, okay. Good point. And also good to know about the local certs that they normally cooperate with international certs as well and national cybersecurity centers. So they exchange details. So they maybe have something that you are not aware of, and could be good to know. Then the next question, does the decision on paying, not paying, depend on the value of the information kept hostage? Juha, I think this is up in your alley especially.
Well, the case of Utah showed that it matters. So then there's, of course, the case that if you don't know what they got, I've said to many cases in the companies that you need to know what data do you have. Do you have some data that is end of business if that is lost? So in that case, it might be reasonable, give it a shot. If the option is going out of business or paying $500,000, perhaps the $500,000 is an option. It's not the best one, but you still have a next fighting day. So yeah, then again, you can die standing by your principle, and that's fine too. That's completely fine. Form a new company. That would be more noble, but less realistic, I think.
And also this, that what kind of piggy bank you need to have all the time for just to prepare to pay to someone. So I guess this was it Garmin case who had used a third party to pay out the ransom. So they used this kind of arrangement to organize the money transfer. So it's not trivial to in a company to organize payment of ransom. It's like a difficult financial transaction. So, but the value of the data, of course, decides. So there is a risk assessment that you need to do, and in this case, they show that, and you have this insurance, cyber insurances that often partially, even in your case, not fully, but partially kind of cover the cost of paying the ransom. So there's a kind of funding for the ransom payout as well through the insurances. And I guess the insurance policies might dictate quite a lot whether the ransoms in fact are paid, or is it all the efforts put in the recovery instead.
Okay, the time is nearly running out, but let's take at least one more question. Do attackers wait in brackets long enough to execute their attack? so it gets also backed up to prevent a decent recovery process.
So ransomware in itself is interesting. It's meant to be seen. That's the point of it. It's not an APT group or anything like that that is hidden. But it might take these guys from anything to 1 hour to 3 months to get to a satisfactory depth in the company. So it's fully possible that the doors that they have into the company are deep in the backups. They might be 3 months into the backups. And if your backup cycle is 2 months long, 1 month long, or something like that, it's in there. Their backup door is in there. So if you recover back without knowing how they got in or how long they've been in, there's a possibility that yes, you recovered from the ransomware, but you left their tools and their way in still in there. So next time around, the guys, like I said, I've been in a double case. Next time around, they make sure that it'll hurt this time really, because now they know that you can recover. Now they know how you do it, so they're gonna really make it hurt.
Then Juha, this is for you as well. Change all passwords. Wouldn't it be better to implement a passwordless strategy, in brackets certificates, and take passwords out of the equation instead of changing password or a multi-factor authentication?
Yeah, so in an ideal world, yes, you would do something else, but there's bucket loads of service accounts. There's multiple accounts in the Microsoft world which have password and have significant power in there. There are even attacks that rely on internal technical passwords. I will not go into details in this presentation because it's way different level, but you can't escape passwords. That's the thing. And it's not the user passwords that I meant in my case. That's what I said, talk to AD guys. There's some really hairy, scary passwords inside the Active Directory that are required for it to function in specific ways. And these need to be changed. They're the number one thing that will be stolen. So because that guarantees the way in, regardless of what you do to the user passwords, regardless of MFA. If they have a foothold in and they have that, they get back in.
Yes,
and there's a really interesting last question.
Yes. How often do the people and or groups performing these ransomware attacks actually get caught and face legal consequences? I'm under the impression that many of these attacks are launched from the countries that don't care to investigate these crimes and don't have extradition agreements with the Western countries, example, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and China.
You're absolutely right. So they really rarely get punished in any shape or form. What we saw with the US Department and Rewell Group is that they've managed to identify some of the persons, and there's sanctions against those. We have in the US multiple court cases where some persons suspected of running one of these either programs or groups, they've actually been identified and been judged for it or put in the trust system. But this is very few right now. That's why telling all of these to the police, giving the technical data to the police, giving as much as we can, then the police in different countries can start mashing up the information. We can start finding this and making it hard for these guys. Right now, in all of the cases that I've done, there's zero attention to attribute. So it's how do we get back up? How do we prevent this from happening? And zero actions against the attackers. That would be the police, that would be the CERT. That's why give them the information so they can start working on stopping this.
Okay, and thank you. That was our last questions, and thank you for all participating this webinar, and thank you for sending us so many questions. I also would like to remind you that we have a lot of content on nixu.com/cybersecurity awareness webpage, and we also have more webinars coming. Next week, we're talking about build a security culture of protect, detect and respond. And we have Lance Pritzner from SANS Institute hosting that with me. And then 20th, we have a Finnish webinar. We're talking about cybercrime in Finland and cyber weather. and there will be our Christian Jamsen from police and Miikka Salonen from National Cybersecurity Center. And then last but not least, the 27th, we get into the third party, the risk of when working with the third parties, and my colleagues Tina, Erika and Nora will be hosting that. And before you leave, or when you leave, you will see a survey, and I really hope that you will answer to that questionnaire very quickly, and maybe you give us some ideas about the upcoming themes that you would like to hear in the future. But thank you everyone, and thank you also Juha and Mikko. If you want to be in touch with us, here is our details, and you will also get a recording of this webinar a bit later today. But thank you everyone, and have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.